I was on a path like towards death ultimately. Very depressed, suicidal even at certain points as well. I felt like I could never just really be. I felt like I always had to kind of be performing in order to get love. I was drowning myself in alcohol as well, drowning myself in drugs, as well. Like, how could God love me? How could God love me? Because look at what I've done. Look at how I've lived.
Adonis, so good to have you here. I want to just jump right in. You lived a double life, a hidden life for over 10 years. I know homosexuality, drugs, alcohol, I just want you to share, what were you hiding from? Why? I mean, that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so would just love for you to just unpack what life was like for you.
So 10 years is definitely a long time. The journey has been, long, arduous. So at that time frame of being hidden, I grew up in church and things like that. So I always knew that this was not something that was pleasing to the Lord.
This being
This being
how you were living.
homosexuality, all of it, honestly,
Okay.
all of what I had gotten myself into, drugs, alcohol, hooking up, all of it. I was on a path like towards death ultimately, very depressed, suicidal even at certain points as well. So anyway, so like it started as a kid growing up in church, so growing up in the church, I felt very much it was more so about rules versus relationship.
Okay.
So in that type of environment, and even just at home, in a sense, like it also felt very much like performance based in order to get love, unfortunately, as well too. I wouldn't
So
say
you felt like you had to earn love.
in a sense,
Okay.
yes. Um, so my dad passed when I was super young too as well. When I was 9, he had passed away. And I would say up until that point, like, yeah, there was issues in our home and stuff like that, but they were kind of more so um, masked in a sense, not necessarily masked, but they were dealt with better. I'll say that.
Okay. Because you had a mom and a dad.
Right, exactly right. And so uh, there was different aspects within the relationship with my mom and I. She was definitely a little more intense at times, essentially, and she kind of walking on eggshells type of a thing. And so growing up in that type of environment, my dad kind of there initially, he would help in that sense with not making it so much like, oh, like there's a lot of tension here kind of a thing. He could definitely diffuse the situation.
Okay.
And so that was always helpful. And then after he passed, it became very, very difficult ultimately at that point. I can understand now on this side of things, like giving her grace and stuff like that, because she was going through her own stuff just as much as we were. But that was very difficult at that time frame. And so I'll say, so from that time frame, as a kid growing up in the church to feeling very much like performance based and living a double life ultimately.
Even from a young age.
From a young age, I feel like that because I felt like I could never just really be. I felt like I always had to kind of be performing in order to get love, not only from maybe family, but also from to be acceptable at church. It felt like in a sense there was almost this hierarchy of certain people above other people even too, even though I knew it was church and like it wasn't that was being said by anyone, but at the same time it just kind of was in a sense known. And so that made it super difficult too. It's just like I'm trying to live up to what I feel like there's this expectation. And but I never felt like I was
reaching it.
I'm reaching it, and there was always like you feel like you'd get close and then the boundary would be moved essentially. So it was always constantly since that point of just like always trying to feel like I had to be more.
Okay.
And whatever I was doing, and ultimately, obviously, in our flesh, like nothing is ever really good enough, right?
Yeah.
You know, because we're all broken, imperfect people,
Yeah.
and yet we're all still trying to,
Yeah.
we're trying to do things, or even within the church, I'll say, you know, we all try to still like, okay, like let's put our best foot forward,
Right.
versus like, you know, hey, we should probably be vulnerable and share what's actually going on.
Right.
And that's always what I longed for. I longed for vulnerability. I longed to be able to be real, because, but there was not that environment where it felt safe to even talk about these things. So that even stemmed into, you know, as I was growing up, and, you know, within church, you know, you would always hear like, oh yeah, like homosexuality is sin, you know, and if like, and what the message I was receiving from that was, you know, and it was being said too, just like, you know, oh, you know, you shouldn't do this because God hates this. It's detestable. And basically, if you are dealing with this, even, you know, like you're going to hell and God hates you. And so I felt like I even had to already perform even for God, essentially, in order to feel acceptable.
Yeah. And was
And
this something you were already struggling with, Adonis? At what age were you saying, like, you said you lost your father at 9?
Mhm.
I mean, that's huge,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that changes your whole
Oh,
world. When did desires, like, when did you start to feel like, man, I'm really drawn
Mhm.
to the guys in my
Yeah.
class or whatever it was? When
Yeah.
did you feel that in the beginning?
I'll say probably from the time that I was probably like 8 or 9, I would say, you know,
Okay.
there was definitely a strong pull towards that,
Yeah.
like desiring to be one with them in that
Yeah.
sense as
Yeah.
well, you know. So yeah, so that was happening, and then, you know, around that same time frame, like I'll say my relationship with my father was, you know, great. Like I mean, as far as it can be at that point in time, you know,
Yeah.
like he taught me how to play baseball. He showed, you know, he taught me how to ride my bike and stuff like that. You know, yeah, played catch with me, stuff like that. Like
So he was present.
oh yeah, he was very present. You
Yeah.
know, he would work a lot, but at the same time, he like, despite how tired he might be at the end of a long day, he would still make time to be present with us and things like that. So I always appreciated, well, I mean, maybe I didn't necessarily appreciate it at that point, but like I was just like, oh yeah, like, you know,
Yeah,
I knew I was cared about, you know, I knew that he loved me,
Okay.
and that was, you know, that was great, you know. So then after he passed, you know, now there was no no one there that kind of filled that gap ultimately, you know. And it was like, you know, I was desiring to fit in and be, you know, one of the guys, quote
Yeah.
unquote. You
Did
know?
you have brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have 2 sisters and my mom at that point. You know,
So now,
now it's a house of women ultimately, and I'm the only boy, and so, you know,
at a young age.
yeah, at a young age, yeah, no less, and that was
Wow.
difficult because it was just like, oh man, like what do I?
How do I do life?
Yeah, how do I do life? Like, you know, there's no one really there to guide me, no one really there to give me direction ultimately now. And you
And
know,
as a boy, as a
yeah,
young boy, I
no,
mean, that's needed.
yeah,
Okay, so how did that? So
yeah.
is at the age of maybe around, was it? Would you correlate the time of you beginning to maybe start to feel like you need to hide or
Mhm,
you're not accepted? Yeah, I know that probably started, like you said, a little before, but
mhm.
would you see a correlation to when your father had passed? Like you're kind of doing now life
Mhm.
on your own, though you're
Yeah,
grateful for your mom, you have your
right,
sisters, but the male role in your life, like did
yeah.
that? Do you feel like there's a correlation there? Or?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, just now now that there was no longer that male aspect who was kind of pouring into my life, I definitely felt like, okay, God, you know, you've taken away my father, kind of a thing. You know, I was mad at God ultimately at this point. You know, I didn't understand. He was only 39, so he was young himself. You know, and I'm only like about a year away from being 39 myself, which is kind of crazy to think about now for my own self. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, so it was just like, it was really difficult, and I'm just like, you know, like what am I supposed to do? You say that this thing is wrong ultimately, but yet I have this feeling of like, this is maybe like, you know, I'm hearing now as time was progressing, like, oh, like, you know, you're just born that way, you know. As far as like homosexual feelings, they started to develop ultimately, of like desiring to be close with other guys, desiring to have intimacy, desiring to be with, in that sense. And then you know, uh it becomes sexualized ultimately as I hit puberty and such like that. You know, I never really developed any relationships with other guys, and on top of it, growing up with all women and stuff like that, I just kind of presented myself in more of a feminine sense, I'll say, as well too, which kind of made me even within, I went to the church school at, so at my church, we had a school,
Okay.
and it was a private school, and they, even by the boys there, or like the older boys, or even my peers, I was made fun of, essentially called gay, called faggot, even within this context. And so, and I was like, how do, like, do they know something that I don't know? Because, like, I mean, this is being spoken over me now. And so I'm like, well, maybe, like, is that true? Like, I have always felt different, kind of a thing. I never really, felt like I did fit in now. So, and now all these things, like, I'm doubting who I am and such. And so I'm just like, okay, well, maybe this is what I am, but also knowing what the Bible says too, I'm like, and what the church has said too, on top of it, of like, ultimately the Bible is the authority, and like, yes, like, but they were telling me like, oh, this is wrong and God hates you. And I'm just like, well, I don't understand how I can, like, I have these feelings, but also like it's wrong and God hates me apparently. And, the cliche, what even churches still say today, which kind of still irks me a little bit, is, love the sinner or hate the sin, kind of a thing. And it's just like, when you feel like this is who you are, or what, developing inside of you is like a part of you, it's like, well, how do you distinguish that? And then also hearing that being said, also within the church context, and whenever someone who was in the homosexual lifestyle, or someone is coming out as gay or whatever was talked about, even within the church context, or family even, would be like, ew, gross, and like look at them as less than. I'm like, how do you consider yourself loving the sinner then in that moment, and you're saying hating the sin? It's like, that doesn't seem like love to me. How you are treating them. Even obviously you're not seeing them in person, but the fact that you're talking like this about them, like behind their back and stuff like that, like that's like, no,
So
I'm not a fan of this.
So there was a contradiction at a
Right.
young age
Oh, yeah, for
of
sure.
like, okay, I have these feelings, I have these desires. People are calling me this.
Yeah.
They're saying I'm gay.
Yeah.
What is going on? I have this desire for closeness with men.
Right. Intimacy.
What's going on?
Yeah, exactly right.
So what started happening from there? At what age is this? So
okay, so after my dad passed, so that was 9, and then as I would say, like, I was probably 11 or 12, puberty starts happening and stuff like that. Like, attractions are now really like, feel that pull, I feel that desire, I want to be with guys, kind of a thing, and then I remember I was at a friend's house for a sleepover type thing, and he said his, basically I got exposed to pornography that night. Like, his dad had porn, essentially, and he brought out, it wasn't gay porn or anything like that, but it was still pornography in and of itself. And I felt uncomfortable about it. Up until that point, I'd never seen pornography. So seeing that and it being a video and such, like, it was very like, I felt like this whole kind of door was open now, essentially, And then, this was probably the early 2000s or something, I would say. So, internet is still, kind of just becoming a thing, and, finding stuff online and stuff. It was a little more difficult, I'd say, perhaps, but like, you found it and you wait for downloads and stuff like that. And a lot of times my stuff was under the cover of night too, because my sisters and I, we'd all have access to the computer during the day, but we all had kind of like allotted time, essentially, and my sisters would be on it during the day. And so a lot of times, like, I would be on it at night, and either they'd be upstairs or whatever, I'd be in the den, kind of a thing, just finding stuff and looking it up, and
and I would assume that is that where kind of hiding became,
Correct.
This was something you were really hiding.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I was hiding it, clearing search history and stuff like that, just making sure that I was constantly making sure that there was no way that someone could find this, and so at that point, I'm entrenched now, becoming entrenched in pornography, and masturbation is a frequent too as well. And so for a number of years, like, that's a hidden thing, but also, speculation, or just people talking and saying like, oh, like, I'd hear like, oh, is Adonis gay, kind of a thing, or, and I'd always be hearing that it'd be based off of, oh, like, you sound gay. And I was just like, sound gay? this is my voice. Like, what do you want me to do with this? You know?
Dang.
And so there's so many things that were kind of just like reinstilling that. And I was just like, okay, well, um, I was still trying to follow the Lord ultimately. I was like desiring. I did
Yeah.
desire to follow the Lord. I gave my life to Christ at a young age. But at the same time, like just the more that these things were becoming, entrenched and crying out to the Lord even at different points, in this time frame of just like, God, take this thing away from me because I don't want this. Like, this is not who I want to be. Like, I don't want this to be my struggle, And at the same time, I'm not going to tell anyone, like, I'm going to take this to the grave ultimately. I'd rather die first than I would say anything about this, And even at going to that friend's house for that sleepover and stuff like that, that wasn't a common thing either. It was something that kind of like, I don't even remember how it happened, honestly, but like, I didn't have a lot of like male friendships. Like, it was just people that were, at your church. So it was like, okay, these are your friends because they're your peers. You go to school with them here. And, my life was this bubble of the church, like, so go to school Monday through Friday. And then, the motto, if you will, is like every time the church doors are open, you're there, kind of a thing, which is not a bad thing, but like at the same,
that was your
life.
But that you're a church kid,
right? Exactly right. Yeah. So, but even still, like I didn't like feel like I could just be even within those other guys. So it was constantly on the felt like an outsider looking in ultimately, and so, so that went on for a number of years, and then up until I would say high school time frame when I was about 15 or 16, I kind of just was starting to just like, recognize that all the things that I was trying to do performance-based wise was like still just not like, it wasn't good enough ultimately, it was not ever, there was just always something else being said or always something else. Like I wasn't, meeting the standard, and I felt like I was also at home trying to, take care of the house. I was trying to, clean.
Trying to be the man of the house.
Yeah, I was trying. Oh, and that's the thing too. I will go back here actually a second. The night that my dad passed, one of the men of the church that had come basically had told me that night too, like, you're the man of the house now.
At 9.
Yeah, at 9. Yeah, and I was just like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't even know how to do that, And so I felt like I was trying to, take care of my mom in a sense too, because I knew that she was depressed, and she was also she had a lot of her own stuff happening at that point too. And again, so a lot of the time I just felt like it's still even like, nothing was ever good enough, even like to try and help her out and stuff like that. It's like, oh well, I would do all these other things, but then, oh, but you didn't do this kind of a thing, and it's just like, okay,
it's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Starting at a young age.
Yeah.
Adonis.
Yeah, it was really heavy. It was very heavy and very just like, again, even at home, it didn't feel like home. It felt like, I felt maybe at home in my room kind of a thing, alone, and just just trying to be okay, I guess.
Kind of away from all the voices,
Right.
away from all the, like you said, people calling you names and the burden of life.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I remember like even a lot of times just being in my room, or just even ironically or unironically being in the closet, ultimately literally of my room kind of a thing. And just being in there, and just like, I would have the light off and everything, and just like being in the dark in there, and just like wanting to just be in a different phase of life, wanting to be even just out of that house, out of like everything that was going on, like, and just my life as personally and stuff like that, and just really trying to find, I don't know, just trying to just like look at it like, okay, like, you're this age now, like, or I'd be like 16 now. I only have a couple more years and then I can get out, kind of a thing, So after I graduated from high school, I ultimately ended up moving out of the house.
Okay, right away.
Pretty much right away. I graduated in June of 2007, and I moved out of the house. It was like end of February, early March of 2008.
Yeah.
Like, so, and I moved in, like, so this, the desperation of wanting to get out and just be on my own and such was so much so that, I mean, so I had friends that were out in the world already at this point, I'll say. And they had a mutual friend who was in the military. Where I grew up was a military town. So he was coming to that area and he was looking for a roommate. And I had just gotten a job and stuff. So I was looking for a roommate too, just trying to get out on my own, basically. And so they were like, yeah, you know, like he's looking for a roommate. You're looking for a roommate. Do you want to? I was like, yeah, sure. Like I didn't even know this person, but I was like, I don't even care. Like I just want out. So, and also at that prior to that point too, I was already getting into drinking and stuff like that too as well.
So
like
into high school, were you drinking?
I'll say my first exposure to alcohol was the day after my 18th birthday, actually, in 2006. So I started drinking at that point. Like got drunk, and I liked the feeling of kind of being numb, essentially. I liked the feeling of just like, oh, like this felt like freedom in a sense too, of being able to just like, oh man, like this takes away everything that I'm feeling, kind of a thing. It makes me feel numb to the world, essentially, you know, and it made me feel good at the same time. So prior to even moving out, I threw some parties at, you know, my mom's house ultimately right before I moved out. You know, they were out of town, so I was just like, yeah, well, I'm gonna do this, and this is kind of like my I don't care anymore kind of a thing, you know. And I didn't even really try to like necessarily cover it up either. Like I cleaned up a little bit, but not really. Because I left it like, you know, I was just like I basically moved out the day that they were coming back.
Wow. Now in this time, I'm just curious, did you ever have any encounters with guys in high school in the sense of anything sexual during that? Or was it more pornography, feeding that, and then opened up to the drinking?
Yeah. So it was mostly pornography, and being entrenched in pornography ultimately it was leading me to desire to want to be with men ultimately. Like, and I, you know, was definitely wanting to hook up. You know, there would be nights where I would be actually looking at, you know, Craigslist at that time frame, you know, like looking for a hookup essentially, but also scared to actually go through and do something like this because I felt like that would make it even more so real, you know. And so one night of a party, ultimately there was a neighbor from upstairs, you know, we drinking and such, and you know, ultimately like it led to sex with this man, this other man. And I was I was just at that point I felt shame at the same time, but also at the same time, it felt like I will compare it to like, you know, the Garden of Eden, essentially, you know, when Adam and Eve partook of the fruit, like their eyes were open now kind of thing. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is something that I can do now, because now that I've experienced it, it was just like, now I wanted to experience this, you know, and so it led me down towards more so Craigslist, like a lot of anonymous stuff though, like again, hookup culture. I didn't want other people to know about this because I was still very much like feeling like, oh man, like this is something that I can't let people know of still because, you know, I won't be accepted, or and also at the same time I feel like I know that God doesn't necessarily want this for me, but I do want this. You know. And
were you still going to church at this time?
I was not.
Okay, so when you moved out, you were done.
I kind of went to church for a brief moment, but over as time went on, I was just like, I was working on Sundays anyway too, and I was just like, you know, I don't really care anymore at the same time as far as all that went.
Okay, so you're having you have your first experience with this guy, and now you're like, I want this. You're on Craigslist. You're looking for men to hook up with.
Correct.
You're not looking for a relationship per se.
I wasn't looking for a relationship. I just wanted connection. Ultimately, I just wanted sex. Ultimately, I'll say that. Like that's what it was. Yeah. So I mean, so that went on for a long time, and at this time frame, I'm living. I'm, like you mentioned, I'm from Washington State. I lived up on Whidbey Island at this time frame, and some friends and I had been talking about moving to the Seattle area. Ultimately, and I just kind of wanted a fresh start anyway, too. You know, I kind of wanted to just get out of where I had known and, you know, kind of branch out on my own, so to speak, you know, with these friends. And so ultimately, when we moved to the Seattle area, I was like, okay, I'm gonna, I joined up with something called Events and Adventures, and I was like, okay, I want to meet people, like I want to kind of start to get to know, and at the same time started going out to more clubs because the area I grew up in, like they didn't really have like bars and such. They did, but like it was local town stuff,
Yeah.
So it wasn't as it wasn't what I was looking for, necessarily. And so when we moved to the Seattle area, I was just like, okay, like we're gonna get into this, And so I started partying more so than I did before. Started drinking a lot more so, and then had exposure to drugs as well too. And so started, weed ultimately. That was the kind of the beginning point for me. And so weed led into doing like mushrooms, and then doing like ecstasy and stuff like that, Molly, all that kind of things. And started going to some raves here and there as well. And when I wasn't with like, and this is still part of the like the double life thing, is like because even like I would go to like I'll say like regular clubs whatnot, but like there would be times where I would go either by myself or I would meet with like other guys essentially through these hookups or whatnot, and go to like the gay clubs on Capitol Hill there in Seattle and stuff like that. So again, still living very much like
the quote unquote normal
what
party
correct
life,
yeah exactly
and then a gay
right exactly
party life.
exactly right, having kind of both the best of both worlds, I'll say. I don't know if that's really accurate or not, but anyway, so just trying to do both, like not necessarily like, okay, this is who I am, because I don't necessarily want to be known for this by people, but at the same time I also want to do it, and I will go to these gay clubs, I will go and hook up with these guys, and then at like this compartmentalization essentially of just like, okay, well, that's this other person kind of a thing, that's that's other Adonis kind of a thing, like that even like within my other friends too, like I mean they also knew like there was a work week Adonis and then there was a weekend Adonis, and weekend Adonis was very much different than his work week. Because like I mean as far as just like outwardly in my quote unquote normal life, I was working at a credit union at that time frame. I wore like suits and stuff like that. I was very like looked very well put together, I'll say. And even would get comments by members that would come through and just be like, oh, you're such a well put together young man, and like they'd be asking, oh, like, are you married or anything, or do and I would just be like, oh no, and like not talking like obviously getting into a major conversation or anything, but they're just like, oh yeah, you're just you're a very well put together person. And I was like, and then thinking to myself internally, I'm like, man, if only you knew, like this is I'm a mess, like, and I could recognize that I was a mess even at that point in time, as I'm trying to pursue all of these other aspects.
Did you ever date women at any of this stage?
So again, so even in my the life that I was leading ultimately, as far as partying with one group of friends who would be like, I'd say like, I'll say the straight friends, I guess you would say, I would be like talking about maybe I talk about girls or something like that, or there would be times where I'd even made out with a bunch of girls, so random girls and stuff like that at different parties or even at a club or something like that, to maybe keep up like this persona or guys of like, yeah, like, oh yeah, like I'm just not interested in having a relationship or whatever, but like, people would see this, and I would say in a sense I was strategically planning certain things too, so that would happen, so that people wouldn't necessarily be trying to find out about this other aspect of me, even though there might be speculation kind of a thing. Like, and at the same time, so like I'm doing I'm doing that, but also could be even the same night kind of a thing, like going after I finished with them, or I was also historically known to just kind of like disappear kind of a thing in a night, and like people would just be like, oh yeah, we'll find him again tomorrow kind of a thing, or like, they just be like, oh,
Adonis is gone
Yeah.
again.
Well, and even at that time, they would be like, freaking Adonis kind of a thing,
Mm.
just disappearing again, you
Mm.
know, like.
And then would you run over to your gay friends or gay
Well,
clubs?
like,
Or?
so, or just like I would have something already planned, like, like a hookup or something like
Gotcha.
that via Craigslist or something,
Okay.
you know, like, so I'd be going to that, not necessarily going to always gay clubs or something
Yeah.
to hook up, but like, that would be part of it. But a lot of times it was like, oh, I'm making these other plans too as well. So, and I didn't, and again, I also kind of like the aspect of just like, in a sense, being mysterious in a sense, or like being like just disappearing. So no one could ever really quite put their finger on what was maybe happening, or like, oh, like, yeah, that was Adonis. He's just, we don't know. Like,
Yeah.
he goes. He's
Yeah.
a free spirit kind of a thing, you know. He does whatever, you know. We don't know, you know. And like, and then I reconvene with them, and they'd be like, oh, where did you go, or what happened, you know? And I'd just be like, oh, you know, I went and hung out with this other friend, kind of a thing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I went to this other party or this
Yeah.
other thing, you know.
So how long did you do this? How long did you kind of like hold up this persona while living this other? What was that like for years that you did
I mean,
this?
it was years. Yeah. I mean, so from the time that I actually hooked up, I'll say, which was in 2000 and I want to say it was probably like 2009. You know, I was like, you know, looking, excuse me, actively hooking up from 2009 up until even, man, 2000 and 2015 probably, because I mean, even, yeah.
So you did this.
Yeah.
You did this whole hookup party thing for well over 5 years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like the party scene was getting very, very crazy. Like, so when I moved down to the Seattle area, that was 2012. It was early 2012. And so for about a year during that time frame, I was super active, like just hooking up and just like really like feeling like this was like the only thing like that was keeping me going in a sense, even though I knew it wasn't the answer, I guess, too, because it was meeting that flesh need ultimately in that moment, you know, like I felt fulfillment in like the hunt and the chase, you know, and just trying to find that hookup, find that, you know, that person. And it was just like, you know, I would no sooner had I, you know, finished that hookup that I would just be like, oh, well, like that felt good, but oh, I need to do that again, kind of a thing, you know. So it was becoming like a day-to-day basis, you know, and getting again very entrenched, you know, and also at the same time, you know, I was drowning myself in alcohol as well, drowning myself in drugs, you know, as well, which again a lot of times, you know, the drug aspect was more so on the weekends. The alcohol was definitely, you know, becoming and any day that ended in Y. So why not was my motivation essentially. And so I was definitely an alcoholic, functioning ultimately. And so like that was, you know, becoming the only way that I knew how to like kind of cope with everything that was going on inside of me, you know? And so as I'm living all of this out, I'm just like also recognizing that I'm also depressed, you know, even though I'm doing all of these things and outwardly like, yeah, I seem happy. I seem like, oh yeah, like, you know, nothing seems to be really wrong, you know. I'm you know, doing well at work. I'm succeeding in a sense, you know, like I'm something that always was my thing was like I'm gonna be a productive member of society to prove like to like even like the church people kind of a thing, like, oh, just because like I can do all of these things kind of a thing and still be okay kind of a thing, you know. I don't have to like yeah, I don't know, I don't have to be like what they think that I am in order to like I don't know, be okay, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So what, I mean, this went on, you're realizing you're depressed. Where'd it go from here?
So, well, it kind of, I'll say it culminated in 2013. In October, I went to a rave with some friends, and my sister actually was with myself that evening as well too. And we had gone to this thing in downtown Seattle called Freak Night, and some of the friends that we mutually shared had brought some drugs with them and such, and so I basically, I just was popping them, kind of a thing, like just popping them, and drinking alcohol, and over the course of that evening, I just kind of like I kind of lost control in a sense, in the sense of like I never no longer um, like I mean I was also known to black out kind of a thing, just like, but I would still kind of manage to find my way back and all of that. But like this night was different in the sense of, and if I can go back actually a second, prior to this happening, I would write in my journal a lot, kind of a thing, because there was just so much going on and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, and I was just feeling so overwhelmed with everything. Like that felt like my outlet, and something that I wrote in my journal, because I was super depressed and drinking all the time and doing drugs and such, and just trying to just like disconnect from everything and just try to be like everything is going to be okay, everything's fine. I wrote in my journal prior to this incident happening, probably like a couple months prior, like I was just, so directionless, and I was just so lost, and I was just like, in big bold letters, I remember I wrote at the very end of this journal entry, I don't know who I am, and like big bold letters and an exclamation point at the end of it. And so then, fast forward to this night, this Halloween night, basically, going to this rave, drinking and just popping pills, and I get separated from the group that I came with, my sister and our friends and such, and I basically like I'm rolling essentially at that point, and I like just so much is going on. I'm listening to the music, whatnot, and anyway, so basically, like I end up leaving the rave at some point. Like I remember bits and pieces of that night, not all of it's very clear, but basically I remember like um, at some point I had taken my costume off and I was literally walking the streets of Seattle just in my underwear, essentially, and somehow I made it back to the hotel where I was staying at, and but I remember thinking during this time frame, because even as this night is going on, I mean, I'm very much a believer, like, like there's very much a spiritual realm connected with all of this as well too, because like even when I was at this rave, like there was certain aspects of like I was looking up at the stage where the concert was happening, and I felt like it looked like gates essentially, kind of a thing, and it looked like the gates of hell, kind of a thing, and I felt like I was like, and there was like fire, I remember seeing, and I was just like, I kept getting closer to that, and I was just like, I would kind of like, come to myself for a second, and I'd be like, oh no, like I don't want to go that way, like that's scary right now, kind of thing. I don't, no, like, so I'd go back, and then I'd get kind of caught up, and then I'd recognize it again, and then I was like, oh no. And so then when I left and everything, like I'm having like a lot of interactions in a sense of like feeling like there's like demons around me and something like that, and even at one point, so I feel like I remember being on my knees, kind of a thing, and I remember like I couldn't look up or anything, and I felt like in that moment, like I was standing before the Lord, or kneeling before the Lord, essentially, and just like, I couldn't even look, because I felt like I kind of looked around on the sides and stuff like that, and it seemed like a throne room kind of thing, but I couldn't even look up at the actual uh, person sitting up there, and because I was just like feeling so ashamed. But at the same time, um, come to find out, basically later, I overdosed, and I had passed out in the hotel up. So I made it like I was a floor above where my actual room was, and I remember this moment vaguely as well. But like I remember being in the hotel thinking it was like God's waiting room, essentially, or something like that, and there was a phone there, and I picked up the phone, and it immediately like called the front desk, and I was just like, is it like, so what's next, kind of a thing, like that's what I remember saying, like the person answered, and I was like, what's next, kind of a thing, and then I kind of just dropped the phone, whatnot, and then so I was like, and then I was passed out like front of the elevator, whatnot, and so like they had called an ambulance and stuff like that, and I kind of came to essentially when I was being put into the ambulance, and like I remember seeing my sister and another one of our friends there too as well, and like because they didn't know where I was, and then they were just getting back to the hotel because they had been looking for me, and then they see me being taken away in an ambulance, basically.
Wow.
And so, so all that to say is just like that was like the start of a wake up call. I would essentially say of just like, man, like I'm not okay, and I knew I wasn't okay. And at the same time, I'm also like preparing as well for an international trip that I'm going to be taking to go backpacking through Europe, essentially, kind of a thing, you know. And so like all like this is culmination right now, and I'm just like, oh, like I'm not okay. And so like, and you know, ideally, like no one had ever been there for like one of these like, I mean, not that I'd ever overdosed before, but no one had ever been there for like one of these crazy things. Like if I hadn't have gone with these friends or whatever, and I had just ended up in the hospital, like I would have never said anything to anyone. I would have just like, you know, like no one needs to know about this. Like this is on me. This is my own fault anyway. So like I'm not gonna tell anyone. But like because it was my sister and because like we had mutual friends, like now they know about this aspect anyway of like the overdose, and like you know they knew that I was doing drugs and they knew I was a partier and such. But and then at the same time, like my sister had my phone and stuff like that, and like apparently like my phone was blowing up, and I think she had later told me like, you know, yeah, you had other like guys texting you asking you different stuff or whatever, I think. And so anyway, like she kind of had a feeling, but like she didn't necessarily know like, at that point, you know. So anyway, yeah, so that was the wake up call, beginning of a wake up call, I'll say, you know. And so at this point, I'm scheduled. So this is October, and I'm scheduled to leave on this backpacking trip in December of that same year of 2013. And I'm kind of like at this point, I'm kind of at a crossroads, if you will, of like, man, like I need to make a decision, kind of a thing. Like, am I going to live openly gay ultimately, or am I going to give my life back to Christ? Because I recognize that I need him. I think I do need him ultimately, but at the same time, like I don't know, like I feel like I'm too far gone. You know, I've gone down this road, and I feel like there's no way to really come back from this. You know, I've lived in all of this, and like and you know, the devil is speaking into this of just like, you know, like yeah, God hates you anyway, so like you can't come back to him. You know, there's no hope for you. Like, you know, you're just too far gone. You know, and I believe that. I was like, yeah, like how could God love me? You know, how could God love me? Because look at what I've done. Look at how I've lived. You know, and so I ultimately go on this trip, and one of the things is because I was really like getting anxious about this trip because I was like, man, I just had an overdose kind of a thing, you know, like I'm about to go on a trip for months now, and I'm gonna be by myself no less, and like what if I go crazy or something, you know? What if I go off the deep end and then I die overseas or something, you know? And I'm like, okay, God. I remember it was like early December, right before the trip was going to take place. I was like, okay, God, like I'm making a deal with him basically of like, okay, God, if you let me survive this trip, like when I get back, I'll give my life to you. I said that. I said those words. I remember this very vividly. And, you know, so, you know, I go on this trip, and, you know, I make it back alive, obviously. And like essentially, like my plan was to give my life back to Christ, but at the same time, like, oh, friends were like, oh, hey, you know, you're back. Like, we want to see you. We want to hang out. So like, kind of like, I started going out with them again and doing all these things. And then, but May 17th of 2014, God kind of like, well, he met me exactly where I was at. I'll say that specifically. He met me exactly where I was at because I was walking towards a Sounders game, which is the local soccer team in the Seattle area. And we were going to see that game, and we'd been drinking that day. And we were in the midst of walking to the stadium to go see the game. And I remember very vividly, like, it was just like this, I internally heard like this voice of just like, it was God ultimately saying, you know, there's never going to be a good time to leave all of this. Like specifically, like there's never going to be a good time to leave all this. and like, you made a promise with me, or you made an agreement with me, essentially. And it wasn't like coming off as like a condemnation thing, or like, oh, like you need to do this kind of a thing. It was just like, you made an agreement with me that you would give your life back to me, but if you want to continue to live this way, like, that's fine. I just can't go with you anymore. In that moment, that interaction of God just saying, like, there's never going to be a good time to leave this behind, and like, um, it was like, it was just like, yeah, like in this moment, I'm thinking like, yeah, this hasn't been what I've been wanting, and I have not been desiring this for a long time now. Initially, yes, it started off as fun and I enjoyed it, but now I'm just, I'm a mess. Like, but also at the same time, I'm like, God, like, I don't know how you can, what you like, how am I going to come? How can I come back to you, kind of a thing? Like, I haven't cleaned myself up, I don't feel like I'm worthy or good enough ultimately, to even be desired ultimately to come back. And so when he was just like, there's never going to be a good time to leave all of this, it was just like, again, a light bulb moment of just like, yeah, like in that moment, I'm like, yeah, I haven't been wanting to do this. So, okay, God, like, yes, I do want to, I do want to come back to you, but I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
And like, God, you're going to have to walk me through this kind of a thing, obviously, because I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to, I don't know how I'm going to stop drinking. I don't know how I'm going to stop doing all of drugs, sex, alcohol, sleeping with men, all of those things that I had done for, years at this point now, kind of a thing. I don't know, like, how you're going to help me in this kind of a thing, but I'm going to give my life to you, I guess, and it was a Saturday night. I remember that specifically. And I was like, okay, God, like, there was a church that I had gone to at least once before, in one of those moments where I was feeling like, okay, like, maybe I should try church or something, and so anyway, when I gave my life to him that night, I was just like, okay, I'll go to church tomorrow, kind of a thing, and I felt like in that moment of like saying yes, and thinking even about all of these other aspects of like, how are you going to get rid of these things, like, immediately, like, I felt like there was no desire towards like alcohol or drugs anymore. Like, in the moment, like, I just kind of like, I know that this isn't going to be a part of my life anymore, kind of a thing, like, I know that this isn't going to be something that it's going to be a struggle as far as that goes. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, God, like, I feel like you've, like, in a sense, you're taking, like, in a sense, I felt like it was like no longer going to be an issue, and I was just like, maybe this is also taking away the same-sex attraction piece, the homosexuality, the desire for sex with men and stuff like that, and ultimately, so when I gave my life back, I didn't drink anymore that night. I went to church that next day, and basically from that moment, I started to like desire to like, okay, God, like, I'm pursuing after you, but at the same time, I don't know, like, still even what this is all going to look like. I later the next day I dumped like alcohol bottles that I had, like full ones even too.
Wow.
And that's how I kind of knew like, okay, this is different, because I'd always like initially when I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna quit drinking or whatever, I'd always keep something just in case, But in that moment, I was just like dumping it all and just throwing away like some drug paraphernalia that I had as well too. And I was just like, okay, I'm just tossing it all, kind of a thing, And that was the next day. And I was just like, okay, God, like, and I went from going out actively, like every weekend and also some weeknights and drinking on a regular basis to like absolutely nothing, essentially,
Wow.
And, so that was just, that was new. Like,
Yeah.
we went from like, and I was just like, okay. And now I'm trying to like go to church as well and trying to like now fit in with, in a sense, I say fit in, but I was trying to like, I don't know how to be at church now, kind of a thing, like, because I've not been in church in forever, and also like I've lived this whole other life now, kind of a thing, and yet, and I didn't when I gave my life. So when I went to that church, I gave my life back to him, but I didn't necessarily like. I didn't make a big deal about it necessarily there even. I didn't even like go up to the front or anything like that, like asking for prayer, but I was just like having my own moment with the Lord in that service at the altar call. And I was just like, okay, God, like this is the start of something new. And I don't know what this is going to look like. And I don't know how like you're going to do anything in this, but like I'm here,
Here I am.
Yeah, here I am. Exactly. And, yeah, so like, and that was the start. And so for about a month after all of this, dumping the alcohol and stuff like that, I'm not going out anymore because I didn't have a desire to even pursue that now. But I'm also desiring still having to have relationships and things like that, and I don't know how to necessarily build relationship now with church people
Yeah.
after not being in church. And
Yeah.
like, I'm not necessarily gonna open with like, yeah, so this is what I've been doing,
Right. Yeah.
like, so it was just
Big transition.
yeah, big transition.
Yeah.
But going from all of that. So again, so for about the first month, like I wasn't struggling even with the homosexuality piece. I wasn't hooking up. I didn't hook up for, honestly, it was probably about a couple of months that I didn't actually hook up.
Which is huge.
No, yeah, exactly. Because I had I'm
This
just
is almost daily.
No, exactly right. And I was just like, okay, well, like God, like maybe you've taken this thing away from me too. And I don't have to worry about this, And like, you've healed me. Like I can kind of move forward in life, and like, I don't have to worry about this. And then it seemed like, okay, all of a sudden, like almost I'll say the honeymoon phase of like coming back to the Lord, because then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, like I want this kind of a thing. And like I had no will to say no kind of a thing, So at the same time, even though I wanted to serve God, like, but I found myself going back to this again, like I found myself hooking up again. I found myself, looking at pornography. I was going on Craigslist. I was doing all of these things still.
Were you drinking or doing drugs?
No, I didn't do I never went back to the drugs or the alcohol, whatnot, as far as
Wow.
like, any of that, like,
Which is still huge.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I know, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, the will to be able to do that and the grace of God.
Yeah, no, it was definitely the grace of God.
Yeah.
Because
if that stuff had been involved too, I mean,
So, for sure, yeah. Well, and then that's how I knew too, is like, oh man, if I know that if drugs and alcohol get into this, like I'm done for, But at the same time, I'm like, God, as I'm going back towards this stuff, I'm like, God, I thought you like took this stuff away from me. Why am I still here? Why am I still struggling in this? Why am I still going through this right now? I don't know what else to do. Like, I thought
you were supposed to take care of all this.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Did you open up to anybody at the church in that time?
Not in that time frame, no.
Okay. So you were trying to do this alone,
yeah,
and God.
Yeah, exactly right. I'm just trying to like, okay, God, like I gave you my life kind of a thing. Like I feel like, like in a sense, like, yes, the rest is up to you, but also like I felt like I also had to do something too, And anyway, so like I'm calling out to him. I'm like, God, like, since I was a child, I've been asking you to take this thing away from me, and like here I am now. I'm an adult. I'm in my at that point I was 25, and I'm like, God, like how am I going to do all of this kind of thing? How do I come back to you? How do I stop hooking up with men? How do I stop, going and having these meetups to sleep with these guys so that, I just don't know. From the time that I was young too, even, it's just like, I never was someone who necessarily believed that I was also born this way kind of a thing, even though it was being like said, oh, like, like, yeah, he's probably gay kind of a thing. All of these things, like I still didn't think that that's who God was, that he would create me this way again and say then say that was wrong, And so ultimately, as I was, seeking the Lord, like I was, listening to a Christian radio station one day, and there's a Christian counseling network of that local area. And I reached out to them, and I set up a counseling session, like, because I was like, this is the first time I'm going to talk to anyone about any of this too. And I'm just like, I don't even know what this is going to look like. I don't know what they're going to try and tell me or what I'm going to try and do about this, but I'm like, okay, let's step into this. And so anyway, so I go to this counseling, and I'm super nervous. Like I even thought about leaving kind of a thing, because I'm like they're probably going to just judge me. They're probably not going to understand. They're going to probably condemn me anyway. So I should probably just leave. And like all of these thoughts are going through my mind, like before I even go in for this session. And so, go into the session, because up until this point too, as well, like I was like, oh, therapy and all that counseling and stuff, that's only for people who are crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm definitely crazy. I was definitely crazy.
Definitely had some struggles.
Definitely had some issues. So, and so I go into this counseling session, and I'm just like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this kind of a thing. So I, laid it all out there kind of thing, where I was, where I'd been, everything, drugs, alcohol, all of it, and, he was just, he was very gracious. And at the same time, the guy who was a counselor, like his was like kind of an intro session, basically kind of see where I was at. And, he was like, I'm willing to work with you, but this is not necessarily my like forte kind of a thing in a sense, you know, but like I'm willing to work with you and I have some thoughts or ideas. But he's told me that there was someone who had come out of this lifestyle and also was doing similar counseling work. But it would be like a 45-minute drive to get there. But he's a layman at a church actually, so and he doesn't charge for his sessions actually. And he was like, so it'd be basically an investment of your time to drive there and do all of this. And he gave me the information, and I ended up scheduling something with this person. And you know, this is going to be the first time I'm going to meet, or the second time I'm meeting with someone else to share something like this deep and personal, you know. And so I drive over there, and I start sharing with this person, and then. Or well, even before I started sharing, he kind of gave me a layout of kind of like how this can develop and stuff like that in somebody's life, and how you know, a disconnect from your peers and stuff like that can you know, and just, you know, not having a father present. Not to say like obviously like there are multiple people who like you can have a father, but they can also not be emotionally present, of course, too. But you know, just depending on that, like that was kind of a significant thing that could make this develop in somebody's life. And so there was multiple avenues of just things that he went into. Like before I even shared my story, then I was like, man, you just told my story kind of a thing. Before.
Oh, so you didn't even open up to him?
No, not initially. Yeah, not even initially.
Okay.
Like he just kind of laid out kind of a rough skeleton, not to, he said pigeonhole anyone, but like kind of just like, this is kind of like the rough layout of what it kind of looks like. And I was just like, wow, you just kind of just told my story before I even said anything, you know, as far as that goes. And anyway, so then I shared my story with him, and, you know, he said, okay, like, yeah, I'm willing to go on this journey with you if you are willing to also go on it. And I was like, you know, the cliche of like, oh, well, I'm going to pray about this first, you know, kind of a thing before I just say yes, you know. And, but at the same time, you know, I had been praying up until that point of like, God, like, you got to do something here. You got to, you know, you got to help me because I don't know what else to do. And so, you know, I'm very much a firm believer that, you know, God obviously brought this counselor into my life through a series of events ultimately, you know. And so began that process of just doing, you know, healing work, talking about, you know, childhood traumas, talking about the loss of my dad kind of a thing, talking about just all the drugs, the alcohol, the masking of the, like, you know, things that have been spoken over me kind of a thing, you know, just all of these things, these lies that I'd believed about myself, you know, for so long. And began to work through and process those things. And as time went on, you know, like I would say that, you know, there was starting to be a less intensity of these attractions, I'll say, you know. As far as like deciding to hook up there initially, especially, I will say, because it's not been a perfect road whatsoever by any means. You know, there was still hooking up happening. There was still pornography happening at different points, you know. And
were you honest with him in that?
Oh yes.
Wow.
Oh yes. I mean, and I, you know, and I had, you know, started building accountability, started going to some even men's small groups and stuff like that too. And like one of the men's small groups that I went to, I was just like, okay, if I'm going to do this, like I have to be vulnerable, like completely. And I'm like, and I'm the one who's going to open this whole thing up too. It's like being the vulnerable one too, because like, you know, I went to a group that was dealing for people who are dealing with like, you know, sexual addiction ultimately, you know, at this church. And I'm hearing people kind of sharing and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah. But like, I feel like no one was really getting like super deep. And I'm just like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be the one, because like, if I'm going to get, you know, to be in this, I gotta be in this, you know? And so like, I was just like, okay, well, this is me, and this is where I'm at, you know, like within my own struggles and such, you know, this is like everything that's kind of going on and has gone on. And, you know, everyone just kind of was just like, oh,
wow.
yeah. I mean, it's a lot, and but at the same time, they're like, well, thank you for sharing. Like, I mean, that's what this group is about, actually, you know. And so then from there, kind of got other people to kind of share even more so deeply as well too. And so I was just like, you know, it was a powerful moment in that sense of just being able to kind of share, especially with other men, because like, you know. My thing, and even now sometimes it's still like that idea, like, you know, being rejected because of like, oh, like, you know, by men in particular, of just like, oh, because like, yeah, I've slept with other men, obviously, I've slept with multiple men, like, and all of that. And in all of this too, like I, because I was just so sexually active, like I wasn't, keeping a tally either. And so I don't even know like the number either, which is just also was kind of a scary thing, I'll say too, as far as that goes. And, anyway, so all that to say, so like, yeah, I was in that. I was going through the process of healing and definitely not doing it perfectly. And I'm still not doing it perfectly even now, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, like it's been like that time frame, that healing process was super intense, super vigorous, but spending time with the Lord and active prayer and stuff like that. Andy Kaminsky has the Living Waters program.
We had him on the show.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so like I went through something similar called Journey. It's based off of Andy Kaminsky's stuff as well, and so I went through that at this church that where my counselor was based out of, and went through that process and the healing prayer and stuff like that, and renouncing lies that have been spoken over me, and just going through that, all of those things too, and like one particular night, kind of a thing, like I remember like just, man, like going through that, like the enemy has been fighting, this whole time, even now, obviously, of just like me stepping into this kind of a thing, me trying to find healing and such, like I remember like they were trying to pray over like some lies that have been spoken over me, and I just remember like feeling like as they're praying, like my fists are clenching up, kind of thing, because I'm just like, even as far as like this identity piece and stuff like that, I'm just like this is like, I remember saying like, this is all that I have, kind of a thing, like, and I don't know what else to do, kind of a thing with this, And
it's like letting go of the only thing you know.
Exactly right. And like at the same time, not really knowing who I really am too, because like was living so many, like, okay, I'm living one way with these friends, I'm living this way with these friends, like I have my party friends, I have the gay friends, I had the ones that weren't even partiers at all, kind of a thing, that kind of kept me balanced. Like these are the friends that I moved in with, and I'm so thankful that I moved in with some people that throughout the whole process of me going on this journey, like even within the midst of my partying and stuff like that, like they've always been people who have been there for me in the midst of it all, like in the midst of every season of my own life. And it's been truly like a blessing in that sense, because like they've been like the stable people in my life ultimately, even when they've had their own issues, kind of thing, but they always had been like the stable people. So anyway, I'm so thankful for like so many people that have kind of poured into me throughout this time frame,
Adonis, when you did all of this, did anybody force you?
I never was forced into doing any of this stuff. Like honestly, like if it had, if it was me operating out of my flesh, like I obviously wouldn't have done it, kind of a thing, it was definitely like a choice that I made though, still, because I was just like, when I gave my life back to Christ, I was just like, okay, God, like, like I said, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm going to give myself to you, and I'm going to allow you to do the work, even when there are times, even now, obviously, like
where you don't want to.
Yeah, exactly, where you don't want to, and also you lay something down and then you pick it back up, kind of a thing, thinking like, oh, my way is better, kind of thing, but it's like, well, no, that's wrong.
And then you lay it back down.
Exactly
again.
right. Exactly. You go through that process multiple times, and obviously no one has ever forced me to do anything that I'm doing. I'll say that God has prompted me to do all of the things that I have done, and even in the midst of me maybe not wanting to, kind of a thing, even to be here right now with you, sharing, publicly, and obviously we've been through Freedom March together as well too, and doing like sharing there through public testimony and such, like that is something that I never wanted. That was never my goal. Like this was never.
You actually lived the opposite. You lived hiding it.
Correct. Exactly right.
So no part of you is good.
Yeah.
I mean, even for me, people are like, oh, you just want to be known. I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
Remember what I'd be known for?
Yeah.
I'd be known for a train wreck.
Yeah.
I'd be known for hurting people, for making a mess of my own life and others. Like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not a joyous thing to do, to share on your own how you lived apart from God.
No.
Like, that's not it's not a glamorous thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I get it. And you know what I just heard too? Like, as I was wondering, because I don't know this part of your story, so I'm genuinely just curious. And so asking that question, did anybody force you? I heard nobody, no person forced you, and neither did God.
No.
He invited you.
Yeah, he invited me. Yeah.
He prompted you.
Exactly right. Yeah.
He encouraged you.
Yeah.
But he he gave you the grace needed.
Oh, and he still.
Oh
continues,
gosh.
Yeah.
Apart from it, I'd be we'd both be face down somewhere.
No,
so
definitely, yes.
But in that, so it's just beautiful. Like people didn't force you.
No.
People didn't push you.
Yeah.
God didn't force you, and He didn't push you. But
Mhm.
He did help you.
Right.
Because you
exactly.
asked.
No, exactly right. Yeah. Well, and this is the crazy. Like, look, I think the more that I grow in my walk with Christ, and I think like obviously there are seasons where it's like I feel like there's so much happening like God is doing and stuff like that, and not to say that God's not working even in the midst of like those seasons where I don't feel Him doing anything, but like throughout this journey, like there have been moments where I would even like yell at God kind of thing, like God, like I'm done here kind of thing, like I don't know like what you want from this, like I don't know like what this is even doing, like I'm done kind of thing, while saying that, knowing in the back of my mind, like I know that I'm not, but I'm just like, and God knows,
you're being honest.
Yeah, I'm being honest. Like I'm being honest that this sucks. This is hard. And like, I mean, I'll say like I've said F you to God kind of a thing, and like, yet God still kept meeting me, He still kept loving me. And, He is again, the one like throughout my whole life of growing up in the church and stuff like that, and like I never really felt like anyone met me exactly where I was at kind of a thing, and that was always my desire. And so God has definitely met me where I'm at, and He's the one who met me in the darkest nights kind of a thing. Even prior to giving my life back to Christ, there would be nights where I recall in the midst of drunkenness, in the midst of like the brokenness that I was experiencing, or having just slept with some guy kind of a thing, and there's like this yearning, this brokenness coming from deep within, of just like this calling out of like, God, like I don't know who I am kind of a thing, God, I need something. I need you. I don't know how that's going to look because, according to what I was, how I was raised and stuff like that, like like you hate me kind of a thing, how could you love me? Like you don't love me. I have not seen others who have maybe been in this lifestyle even loved by the church either. I have not seen anyone being met exactly where they're at, and so anyway, so like all of this time frame leading up to even now kind of a thing, like God has continuously met me, and God has been the one who's been doing the work. And obviously like I've been submitting despite my hard-headedness at times too. I'm still submitting and still desiring, even when like there are times like the intensity towards like, oh yeah, like because there are still temptations, there are still even mess ups where I'm just like, oh gosh, like
what did I just do?
Yeah, exactly
what am I
right.
doing?
Yeah, what am I doing? And I'm just like, no, God, like I know that this is not the answer. And even in those moments too of even like maybe like contemplating or even like, starting to broach, and I'm just like, whoa, like I know that this isn't the answer. I know that this is not going to bring the peace, because like I know for many people like this the testimony can be like, yeah, like, oh, I'm completely set free. And I don't doubt that God can completely set someone free from this, but at the same time, I also recognize that, even in Paul's life kind of thing, the Bible, like, he had to continue to submit something over to the Lord kind of a thing,
Continue to fight temptation.
Exactly right. And
Trust
say
in the
like,
Lord.
His grace is sufficient, and do I always look at God's grace as being sufficient? No, I definitely don't. And that's still my downfall at times too. And I'm just like, but God, like, I know, like, like the fact that He keeps meeting me and keeps loving me despite my own brokenness, despite my own failures, and despite like how I still, like we talked about, like pick up something that I should have left down kind of a thing, and but like God has opened so many doors throughout this too as well. It's just like, something that I've always wanted and something that I always desired was to be the person that I wish that I had to someone else. And God has opened that opportunity in multiple ways, in multiple facets, and so at my church, I serve in youth ministry kind of thing. you know, have led groups even that deal with like pornography struggles and stuff like that for young men in particular.
Yeah.
And I've walked with a lot of young men in my own church who have struggled, and like because I've been vulnerable and I've shared like my testimony, and I've like my church has been very open to me sharing, and they they've been super supportive. Like the church where I go to now is just like been like the first church where I've been fully known and fully loved. And that's something that's powerful too, as well. Like God
in the midst of your journey,
in the midst of all of this journey, and like this, and you know, and I've been very vulnerable in the multiple aspects, even since, you know, coming back to the Lord, of just like my own brokenness and own failures, even now, kind of a thing, even within like these last years and stuff, where I come to even like the church leadership, and I'm just like, I'm still like broken in this way, kind of a thing, you know, God, like I need still healing in this kind of a thing, you know, like. And they've just met me where I was at, kind of a thing. And they've been the hands and feet of Jesus to me and continue to lift me up. And I was like, you know, if you want me to take a step back from anything, like I'm willing to do that too as well, you know, like be it serving in youth ministry, be it serving, like, you know, pouring into young men or something, because like I'm still working on my own stuff, you know. And they were like, no, like you, like we, you know, they're thankful, they're full. They've been like, you know, like we see that you're not hiding something here.
You're not living a double life.
You're not living something. You're struggling, and but you're being honest with us. You're sharing this, and we want you, like we want this, you know. And so that's been encouraging, because I've always felt like, okay, well, I have to take a step back from something in order to.
I messed up. So
I messed up. So
taken.
now, exactly. Like so, like, you know, I need like, and I'm humbling myself and willing to do that if necessary as well too, because I need to, you know. And I was just talking to one of my one of the young men that I had gone through a group with earlier this week, actually, and this is the cool thing about like what God has done, and you know, using that, you know, the worst thing, the thing that I looked at as the worst possible thing in my life, as something that he's worked out for good. Like similarly, like, you know, I think of Joseph and stuff like that, you know, like, you know, his brother sold him into slavery and stuff like that. He went through a lot of hard times, you know, and you know, even in the midst of like all of it, like, yeah, he still kept his focus on the Lord, kind of a thing, you know. And you know what, you know, his brothers meant for evil, God meant it for good, and obviously it led for their redemption in that time, a famine and stuff like that. But so like this is like where God has been working now, kind of a thing, is just like, you know, how he's used me in the lives of others, and the young men in particular. Is like, so this young man that I was talking to, who's now married and has his own daughter recently as well too, and just talking with him on the phone and stuff like that. And you know, when he had come to me initially, like he was, you know, broken, and just like talking about his own struggles and things like that within pornography addiction and things like that. And you know, God has done such a work in his life where this was something he was able to be vulnerable with, and his like going into his marriage and stuff like that, and talk about in marriage counseling. And you know, like, not to say that he's like, you know, he doesn't still have struggles, obviously, because there's still temptation, but like he's taken what he's learned and the tools and the renewing of his mind, kind of a thing, you know, where he's able to share and you know, be accountable to others. And also he's shared with other people, like, who he may not have known, who were struggling, and now have like opened that door of vulnerability for them, kind of a thing, you know. And now he is he called me because he was looking for material on how to kind of like where to direct this person, and like how he can maybe, like, you know, be helpful to someone else. And I'm just like, God, that's you. And I just told him this because like this is like, but this is also the coolest thing too, is because this is what like I wanted to be. Like I wanted to be that person that I could, you know, be to someone who like I wish that I had, you know, because I didn't have that, you know. And like, so to see this person who's now in their 20s, kind of a thing, you know, like
you are that.
Yeah, I've become.
You're becoming.
You've
that. Become and are becoming.
Yes,
still.
become and becoming. Yes, yes, and that's so powerful. And
that's the redemption of Jesus.
That is the redemption right there. Yes. And
your very thing that you were most ashamed about, most hidden for years, for almost a decade.
Yes.
When you trusted God and was vulnerable not only with him, with yourself, and the body of Christ, he's now using you to help others come out of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Like only God.
Yeah, only God.
And you're crying out to him.
Yes.
And you're continued. Like Dude, I didn't know this, but you were May 17th, 2014. I was October 17th,
Oh, wow.
2014.
That's wild.
Yeah. And so that
Yeah.
is so, and I so
Yeah.
relate, Adonis.
Yes.
Thank you just for the honesty, not only of your past, but even in the present, because I think sometimes we hear people's stories and I love them. Everybody's story is different.
Mhm.
The reality is God's always the same. He
Mhm.
doesn't leave us. He doesn't abandon us. He's gentle. He's patient. He's kind. He's almighty. And he's like, when you're ready,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
even the name of what we're doing here I am.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like,
Amen.
God, here I am. And he's
Yeah.
like, here I am. He's the great I am.
Mm.
And he's like,
Yes.
if you'll let me come in,
Yes.
if you'll let me come in, and your whole life, Adonis, is such a witness to that. And I just want to say, I want to say thank you as a sister, as a friend, for your continued yes. Because I know myself, we're going on to 12 years.
Mhm.
And my 12 years has not been perfect, but he has been. And
Yeah.
that's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to meet a perfect God that I ran from, that you ran from, that we thought we weren't good enough for.
Yeah.
To meet him, to give our lives to him, and then to still struggle.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, because it's the same cry of my heart. I'm like, God,
Yeah.
you've done so much.
Amen.
You've
Yes.
done so much. And there's still so much more. I need more healing.
Mm.
And one of the things that just keeps coming to me is when Jesus says, be perfect just as your Father in heaven is perfect. One of the words for perfect, like the root word, is whole. And I'm still not whole.
Yeah, same.
And it's Christ alone
Yes.
who brings wholeness. And just honor you. I honor you, Adonis, for your vulnerability, with such a life of hiding, to be vulnerable, to trust God, to trust others, and to still walk in that. I still see that in you. And to me, that is leadership, being honest, being real, with these things that you struggle with, and continuing to seek the Lord and letting him come in. And so I know we could probably go on for hours.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just share with maybe someone who's listening? I know that's sometimes it's so cliche, but I do believe there's people, not just one, that's listening and being like, talk to me. Like, tell me personally, what would you say to someone who maybe says, I relate to this guy, whether it be homosexuality, pornography, drugs, alcohol, partying, or the space of, I want all that. I'm not doing it, but I want it. What would you say to someone that relates to you?
Oh, man. Well, again, just thinking back on my own, in that time frame when honestly, just call out to Jesus, because he is the only answer. And Jesus is pursuing you right now. And the fact that even if you're listening to this, that's clear that Jesus wants you and desires you. If Jesus is willing to meet me in my darkest night, and to save me and meet me on a road where I thought I was too far gone, to recognize that you are never too far gone for Jesus to love you, to meet you where you're at, because Jesus is always pursuing you. It is up to us to notice, and also to submit ourselves to that pursuit.
Here I am.
And here I am, exactly.
Amen.
Amen.
Brother, thank you, Adonis. Thank you for being just who you are, and right where you're at.
Yeah.
Right where you're at. Like I there's a grace that I'm receiving from God to allow him to meet me where I'm at, and to hopefully take me to where he has planned. Right?
Yes.
Day by day, moment by moment. So
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Just bless you, brother, for who you are.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity you've given to share.
Amen.